Nancy Pelosi, welcome to Hard Talk.
My pleasure to be with you.
It's a pleasure to have you on the show. Now, you have always been seen as an incredibly internationalist American politician. I think in your years as Speaker of the House and Congresswoman, you visited more than 80 countries.
Yes.
But in that experience, would you say you have seen American power and influence on the wane?
Well, I certainly hope not. Yes, I've visited over 80 countries. For 30 years, I have been in intelligence as a member, as a top Democratic Intelligence Committee, as Speaker and leader. For 30 years, been involved globally in terms of security. That's our oath we take to protect and defend. I think that the previous occupant, occasionally, of the White House was a setback for us in terms of... You
mean Donald Trump? You don't want to name him, is that it? Or?
For me, it's almost like a curse word.
Right, but to be clear, you're saying...
That's who I'm referencing.
Well, you're saying that America's standing and its reach and its influence has been affected by the Trump years?
I think that there are certain questions that arose when he was questioning our commitment to mutual security in NATO and the rest. But not to be talking about him, we're very proud of our president, President Biden, as to how he came into office. Again, we're back to NATO full force in terms of our respect for the countries in NATO. And then when the invasion of Ukraine occurred, the president acted in a very respectful way to the other countries, listening on how we came up with our approach, the timing, the scope of it, and the rest.
But isn't the truth that if we are to talk about the arc of Putin's career with his decisions over time, starting perhaps in 2008 in Georgia to use Russian force, 2014 annexation of Crimea, and then, of course, in February 2022, the invasion, full-scale invasion of Ukraine, isn't the truth that the signals were sent by a democratic White House to Vladimir Putin that he could get away with this? It was Barack Obama who basically looked at Putin and said, I want to reset relations with this guy. I want to work with this guy, despite what he'd done in Georgia, despite what he was doing in Crimea.
Well, I think Crimea, the Georgia situation is a little bit different in that the determination to fight. We're supporting the Ukrainian people's fight for their democracy. This is an absolute invasion. I myself thought that we should have, all of us, not just the United States, but Europe, should have reacted differently to what happened in Crimea. But the fact is, the physical invasion, a violation of the border with the intention of taking over Ukraine is something that has happened now. And the President of the United States, listening and in collaboration with our allies in Europe and even beyond Europe, but just talking about NATO right now, I think NATO has been strengthened when Putin thought it would be weakened. It's enlarged, but it's also intensified its commitment to democracy. So I don't think you should put the invasion of Ukraine at the doorstep of Barack Obama. I think that it is, we're all in this together, and I think that we all should have done something differently in Crimea.
The full-on war in Ukraine has been raging for, a year and a half now. Ambassador Mike McFaul, who used to serve for the United States government in Moscow, says that Joe Biden and his team have been far too concerned about threat of Russian escalation, that because of that fear of Russian escalation, the US hasn't given Zelensky and the Ukrainians all of the tools they need to regain their lost territories.
Well, that's yielding to the title of your program, Hard Talk. Let's hard talk about this, okay? The fact is that, again, I'll just put this in the context of my story. When I was a student, I was at the inauguration of President Kennedy. And in his speech that day, President Kennedy said, to citizens of the world, ask not what America can do for you, but what we can do working together for the freedom of mankind. That's what he said. And that's exactly what Joe Biden did, working together. Not dictating, not condescension, but collaboration.
Sure, but the
collaboration.
Truth is...
And the fact is also that I have been a strong advocate since I was first leader to go to, American leader to go to Ukraine, come back with my delegation to the president to say we wanted more weapons. At the time, it was about distance and speed and the rest. And as you know, there are more things in terms of air power and the rest that we'd like to see from all of us. And so some of the countries are going forward, and I don't think that, I think we do that again in collaboration.
I understand what you're saying about collaboration, but the fact is U.S. Abrams tanks, having been promised, are not yet on the battlefield. F-16 fighter planes not yet being used by Ukrainian pilots in the battle space. ATACMS, long-range weapons not being given by the U.S. to Ukraine. And Ukraine right now is losing men. And the message from Kiev is, if you gave us more, we could win this war.
Yes. And again, as I said, our group has always been on the forefront of asking for more of our government or our collaboration. But I do say this, is when they talk about the F-16s, for example, and they say, well, they have to be trained. Train them now. Train them now. If they're not ready, by the time they're ready, the training will be effective. I don't think we have to do this sequentially. We can do it at the same time. Train as we prepare the planes. I do think that there is a legitimate concern about any use of any of this into Russia that could precipitate a reaction from Russia, and that's a legitimate thing. Is this going to? People are concerned. Is this provocative of a greater reaction from Russia into other NATO countries?
Isn't there also, though, a political problem here in the United States? And we see it in the opinion polling, which shows, while still a majority of Americans support supporting Ukraine.
Yes.
They are less keen on sending more money and more equipment. And I'm going to quote you one congressman. He's a Republican, Andy Harris, but he is co-chair of the Ukraine caucus. He's been a long-time backer of Kiev. And he says, right now, we have to be realistic, that the war looks like it's not winnable, like the counteroffensive has failed, and that is affecting American public opinion.
Well, let me just reject that. Okay, you heard yesterday leaders in the second in command of the Republicans in the Senate, a leader in foreign policy in the Senate, Senator Thune, Senator Lindsey Graham. You heard the chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee, a Democrat on the Democratic side, and me say that we all support the effort in Ukraine. This is a sidebar kind of a thing. It is not reflective. Now, it may be reflective of some Republicans in the House, but it's not reflective of U.S. policy. The fight for democracy in Ukraine is a fight for democracy in Ukraine and beyond, democracy writ large. We have to respect that. What is the solution this person is concerned? That we leave? That we don't support Ukraine? Hard talk. Hard talk. We're there to win. We're in it to win it.
We know what the leading candidates on the Republican side of the race for the White House are saying. They're saying we need negotiations now. We have to end this war now. And if that means compromise with Vladimir Putin, that's what we will have to do.
Why? Let me just say this. I wear this ring made by Afghan women. And the issue of women in conflict, women being used as a weapon of war, is something that many of us in the Congress and in the country and in the White House, whether it was Laura Bush or Michelle Obama or Joe Biden, were concerned about the women in those war areas. Vladimir Putin has had using women as a weapon of war part of his demoralization of the Ukrainian people. That's what he thought. That his soldiers are raping women in front of their children, in front of their parents, kidnapping children, tens of thousands of them. And somebody saying, we've got to negotiate with him, forget about the children, forget about the women, forget about the territory, and when the Ukrainians are ready to negotiate, that's when we should be talking about it. It shouldn't be thrust upon them. It's about their country, their democracy, their territory, their children, their women.
Let me talk to you about a couple of other challenges facing the United States on the world stage. One is China. Now, you took a pretty remarkable decision as Speaker of the House to visit Taiwan, to go to Taipei. Joe Biden did not want you to do that,
Well,
did he?
you don't know that. Why do you say that?
Well, because Joe Biden said that he felt, or at least the U.S. military felt at the time, that your trip was not a good idea.
No, who said that, though?
That was Biden talking about the U.S. military.
Joe Biden said that?
Yeah, he said that the U.S. military felt that your trip was not a good idea.
He said the military.
And he's the commander-in-chief.
Yeah, but he also said if China attacks Taiwan, America will be there to defend Taiwan. And then they sort of said, well, not really quite that.
Well, exactly, Madam Speaker, that's exactly what happened. Joe Biden appears unsure what America's strategic stance is on China, and that worries the rest of the world.
No, it isn't unclear. It isn't unclear. What's clear is that we are for a one-China policy that didn't change by my trip. And by the way, I wasn't the first to go there. Members of the Senate, leadership of the Senate, all men, went there, and China didn't say boo. Now, let's be clear about this. One China policy, that didn't change by any of that. Legislation.
Well, no, with respect, what changed was strategic ambiguity. When Biden was asked, would the U.S., with force, defend Taiwan if it was attacked by China, he replied, yes, if in fact there was an unprecedented attack. Now, that is not strictly U.S. policy.
Well, U.S. policy is to supply Taiwan with what it needs to defend itself. The fact is that we're saying neither side should change the status quo, especially violently.
But I guess, bottom line, do you think that the United States is in any position today to go to war with China over Taiwan?
War is a very last resort. I do think that part of the U.S.-China relationship is something that has to be addressed, about their unfair trade practices, about their military actions in the South China Sea as a deterrent to the free flow of shipping in the area, as well as, of course, the human rights policy. But I'm not naive to think enough that people will care about a genocide and with the Uyghurs, the destruction of democratic freedoms in Hong Kong, the changing of the culture of Taiwan, faith, religion, and culture of Taiwan, and threats.
But the U.S. does need China when it comes to climate change. Is the U.S. showing leadership? Because the reality is, while Joe Biden is spending tens and tens of billions of dollars on the energy transition, on renewables, on infrastructure to create some sort of green economy, he is also supervising an economy where oil output is at record levels of exports of liquefied natural gas. The United States essentially is giving the world a message of, we want to have our cake and eat it too. We want to talk green, but we want to deliver fossil fuel energy.
In the spirit of your title of HARDtalk, you're completely wrong. Just in friendship, may I say.
I'm not offended, but I want to hear why.
You're completely wrong. You're not making any differentiation. You're just paying. The liquefied natural gas issue is an issue to supply countries that need it because they don't have to be dependent on Russia. That is more related to the Ukraine situation, because the dependence on Russian oil, Europe has to diversify. They know that. They've said that. In the meantime, their economy, their society needs more fuel, and that's what that's about. So I myself have had my back and forth with the Chinese government, and they invited me, Speaker, to come to China, have a fresh start, and let's just talk about climate change. I said, I have to talk about human rights, but our focus will be on climate change. They are essential to saving the planet. There's no question about that. But that doesn't mean that domestic production in the United States is an indication of any. Now, one thing that I agree that we have to do in terms of what we've done, $370 billion in tax incentives and the rest. But one thing that we need to do that we haven't done enough of is to get the resources, and this is hard to do in the Republican Congress that doesn't even, who want to reverse everything we've done in climate, is to supply other countries with more resources to help address the climate crisis.
So that's an international priority of yours. Let's now talk domestic politics, because we have to. American politics is in turmoil, and that's largely because of one man, Donald Trump. He faces 91 separate charges in 4 forthcoming trials. Allegations which, of course, Trump still denies. Yet, if you look at the opinion polls, he is running neck and neck as next president of the United States with the incumbent Joe Biden. Does that challenge your faith in the American people, in American democracy?
Oh, no, but thank you.
43% of them right now would vote for Donald Trump for president.
Well, let me just say that's more of a statement about the Republican Party, and that's something you should take up with the Republican, because it is in their party where he has that support. He doesn't have it in the Democratic Party. But I'll say this. The election is about our democracy as well. It's not just about two people. It's about our democracy and the integrity of our democracy. And to your question, no, I have faith in the goodness of the American people, and nobody should ever underestimate the strength of America's democracy. A second term for this person would be a challenge, because he has not honored the oath of office to protect and defend. But I will promise you this: at the end of this election, our flag will still be there, as our anthem calls for. And our flag was still there, with liberty and justice for all. And that's what the election is about.
Let me just ask you a personal question. You were at the center of the storm on January 6, 2021, when the Capitol was invaded by a rioting mob. They invaded your office. People have since been prosecuted, convicted, and imprisoned for what they did. You said at the time, it was caught on camera, you didn't know it was being filmed, but you said at the time all this was unfolding and you'd been forced to flee, you said about the prospect of Trump coming to the Capitol, I hope he comes, I want to punch him out. This is the moment, I've been waiting for it. I want to punch him out, I'm going to go to jail, and I'm going to be happy.
That's right. I said that, I didn't realize that would be broadcast or went out there, but yeah.
I understand the level of your anger, but doesn't that suggest that you, in a sense, were drawn into this toxic political culture, which many Americans right now could lead to further political violence?
Nobody get any equation or equivalence to my saying I want to punch him out, which I've wanted to do for a long time, but now he gave me more reason to what is happening at the Capitol. So don't try to put any
I'm not suggesting that equivalence. All I'm saying is that your anger, your fury, your sense that this was undermining America's democratic system has its own feedback loop, and that right now American
politics... No, but we're on the right track. We are honoring our oath of office to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States. Now, the Constitution of the United States on that day said that the peaceful transfer of power would be that Congress would accept the Electoral College vote. That is why they were there that day, to disrupt the peaceful transfer of power. Yeah, my oath of office said I have to defend that, whatever way that is.
But my point, I guess, is that the anger in American politics has not gone away. In fact, it has intensified. And do you think it is wise for America, for America's system, to be prosecuting Donald Trump, possibly convicting, possibly even imprisoning Donald Trump, who is, in effect, the leader of the Republican Party, may well be their nominee for president, at the very time a presidential election is unfolding?
I do. No one is above the law. And what you may be, what inference I draw from what you're saying is that we should let him go because there's an election. No, no one is above the law, no matter what the timing is. And neither is he. Isn't
the point, and you won't use his name, but isn't the point that Donald Trump has tapped into some really raw, powerful feelings that many Americans hold, particularly working class Americans? Well, they feel alienated, left behind, and they feel your party, the Democratic Party, no longer represents their voice. The Democrat data scientist David Shaw, who says his work suggests college-educated people have taken over the issue prioritization of your Democratic Party at the expense of working-class white people who were in the party, and even at the expense of working-class non-white people who are in the party today. And that's driving those working-class people away.
Well, let me address that. That's a point of view. That's a point of view.
Do you worry about it? That you're now seen
I don't
as a
agonize,
party of the
I
progressive
organize.
elite?
Okay, I don't agonize, I organize. The fact is, the difference between the two parties is a trickle-down economics, a tax bill that 83% of the benefits went to 1% of the population and sent $2 trillion to the national debt, versus Joe Biden, a bubble-up economy, build from the middle, so that everyone can participate in the priority. And the fact is that the press, frankly, used the term uneducated. That wasn't something we said. They said uneducated. I think that was wrong. These people are not uneducated.
So accuse you, Nancy Pelosi, of being out of touch?
No, they don't. Look.
They do.
Well, they say a lot of things about me, but I don't care what they say about me. What I care about is winning elections.
And the final
not
point,
to be a fearmonger, but to be a messenger of hope.
There are many Americans, again according to the polls, who think Joe Biden should not run again because he's simply too old.
But it's 3 years older than what's his name, your friend. He's 3 years older than he is.
Yeah.
Yes, that's a big deal.
I don't wish to be ungallant, but you are 82, and you have handed over power in the Democratic Party, in the House of Representatives, to what you called a new generation.
That's right.
Should Joe Biden be learning from you?
No, Joe Biden is the president of the United States. If we said we have a great president, he's accomplished more.
The American people see Joe Biden's mental and physical health. They see it every day on their TV screens. They are drawing conclusions. A clear majority say he is too old, he should not run again. And that's Democrats as well as Republicans.
Democrats, and if you ask those Democrats, they support Joe Biden. They're not supporting somebody else because Joe Biden is old. Joe Biden is wise. He has knowledge. He has a beautiful vision for America. He has knowledge of the issues, therefore judgment and wisdom. He has strategic thinking about getting things done. That's why his presidency has been so successful on the domestic front. He has empathy and cares about working class families, and we have to communicate that better to the American people, and that is what a campaign is about. I didn't hear you say any complimentary thing about anything that people have said about the president or our performance as elected officials. We don't care about the negative. We're about the positive. It's not about fear. It's about hope. And you'll see, 15 months from now, Joe Biden reelected as president of the United States with great pride.
As you say, we'll see. Nancy Pelosi, thank you very much for being on Hard Talk. Thank you.
My pleasure.